Well, we had to call a quick audible here, but I'm happy to have these guys in studio. If you're in and around Missoula, you want to go down and learn more about one of the fastest growing sports in the world, head on down to Playfair Park. This is, you guys were just debating, are we going to call it the inaugural because maybe it'll come back or not? Either way, it's the debut of and a fun event here in Missoula, the Missoula Sandcast. We got Travis Mayweather and Tri Bourne in studio with us, a couple professional volleyball players who also have a podcast that's really taken off because beach volleyball, sand volleyball has really taken off as well. Thanks for being here, guys. How you guys doing?
Stoked to be here.
Hey, thank you so much for having us.
Of course.
This is my second time in Missoula.
Nice.
I was here around this time last year, and as soon as I left, me and Zanamuno, who she came out on the trip with us, we were like, we got to find a way to get back. And so we're back, and it's so nice to be here.
Well, you got your Paddleheads hat on.
Got the P-Heads hat.
You're already acclimated to the Missoula culture, so that's good.
Yeah.
Try, you got connections here too. You were saying your sister, right?
Yeah, my sister played soccer here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was always wondering what I heard the stories about Missoula, but I was wondering what it was like in the town. So stoked to be here for the first time.
It's been fascinating. You can tell, you can pass this along to your sister. I don't know if she still follows it or not, but University of Montana soccer is like, it's one of the best things going right now in Missoula. Yeah.
Okay.
They were kind of, just kind of an okay average program for a long time, but they have a sweet coach. Chris Chidovitsky is a South African guy who is like
sick, as
good as it gets. They're recruiting on a national level. I mean, they got a 5-star recruit coming in from Washington.
Wow.
Like they were a top 40 team last year, so it's grown quite a bit. It's pretty cool.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I love it.
Let's go Grays.
Exactly, right? So just start with you, Travis. Just give people sort of your background in the sport and also sort of how this trip to Missoula has evolved.
Yeah, well, my background in the sport, what you'll find with men's beach volleyball players is you're going to get the craziest backgrounds into the sport because there's no traditional manner for men to get into beach volleyball or just volleyball in general, especially because I come from Baltimore, where volleyball, like it is in many places in the country, it's a girls' sport. And I ended up just stumbling into it in Florida, where I was actually writing for the Northwest Florida Daily News. My first assignment was to cover a beach volleyball tournament.
Wow.
Never seen beach volleyball in my life. And I was like, this is work? This is what I get to do for work?
Right.
And so I started playing, was terrible at it, and I just tried to find anything I could read on it, found nothing. And so I started working on a book. One of my first interviews was with this guy right here, Tri Bourne. And as I started playing and getting better, Tri ended up getting sick and with an autoimmune disease. And so we ended up starting a podcast that's led to writing, playing, coaching, commentating, all of which starts with our podcast. That's sort of at the center of everything.
Yeah.
And so I came out, did a clinic here in Missoula last year, and we've been talking about doing a Sandcast Tour event. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've been doing the podcast for 7 years. We've probably been talking about a Sandcast Tour for 5. And so I called up Libby Schneider, one of the greatest people I've come across in the sport.
Love Libby. She's awesome.
And I said, hey, we would love to kind of debut the Sandcast Tour here. And she said, all right, let's make it happen. And here we are in beautiful Missoula, Montana.
Oh, that's so awesome. Try to tell us sort of your entry point into the world of sand volleyball.
Yeah, pretty much opposite of Travis. I grew up in Hawaii on the beach at a beach club, the Outrigger Canoe Club. It's kind of a famous spot for breeding beach volleyball players in general. But that was kind of just a kid growing up at the beach club and learned to love the sport, kind of pushed my way through the ranks indoor and at the beach, and then just fully committed to the beach because, like Travis said, like, you can make this a job.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And I had no, wasn't all that great at school and journalism and all that stuff that Travis is really good at. So I kind of took the opposite route. And then once I became friends with him, I kind of, like he said, I got sick and I had some time on my hands. So I learned how to do a little bit of the public speaking and all that. And then we kind of linked up and made the podcast. And now we got a tour.
Here you are. You're on tour. This is the debut spot here in Missoula. What you said, though, the sort of winding paths that bring especially men to beach volleyball so fast. I read last winter break, I read a biography on Wilt Chamberlain.
Okay.
I don't think people realize this, but Wilt Chamberlain is one of the great beach volleyball players of all time. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And, I mean, of course he is. He's the greatest athlete ever, in my personal opinion, in terms of pure physical gifts. But that's sort of like a common story, right? I mean, right now, the guy that's sort of taken the sport by storm lately is Chase Budinger, who was a great indoor volleyball player, but then ended up choosing basketball. It worked out for him okay, playing the NBA for more than a decade. But that's what I think makes this so cool to me is there's so many different ways that you can find your way to this sport.
Yeah,
for sure.
And that was pretty much exactly the topic of the first book that I wrote was just how are people getting into this sport and how are they making it work as a living? Because really only a handful of people at the top can just do beach volleyball as their full-time living. Try is one of them, but most people, they're working and then they're going to the beach, or they're doing it vice versa. They're getting to the beach from 6 to 8 in the morning. Then they're working the rest of the day, probably popping out at night, trying to take some PTO, crashing on hotels with 6 other people, Airbnb, and just sort of road dogging their way through life. And I think it is such a source of so many rich stories of how people get into it. And Chase is such a cool example because he was a great indoor player, was the indoor player of the year coming out of high school.
Right.
And then, of course, he's like, well, do I play basketball, volleyball? Phenomenal athlete.
You play basketball. Go collect that paycheck, buddy.
He did it the right way.
Yeah, right.
And now he's going to be a huge storyline in the Olympics.
Have you guys thought about, I've always thought about this. In America, so especially the last 30, 40 years, football and basketball have just dominated the American consciousness, and men have chosen to pursue.
Yeah.
I always think about like what specific athletes, if they would have went a different route, right?
Right.
Like the conversation's always been, why is Team USA in soccer not that good?
Right.
Compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because Spain's best athletes and Brazil's best athletes and Portugal's best athletes, they play soccer.
Yeah.
Our best athletes play basketball.
Right.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
I always thought of this, though, like, so in your guys' opinion, who would be like a great athlete that would be awesome at beach volleyball? I always thought like Dwight Howard, if you ever tried
Right,
it.
yeah.
What a good question.
That's like the kind of thing where, like, if he's touching 13 feet, like, what am I going to do? I just can't get up there.
Right. Because those that are just listening and not watching the videos, Try, you're what? You got to be about 6'5". Yeah. You're tall too. What are you about? 6'4"? Yeah, 6'4". I mean, Dwight Howard's 6'10".
Well, our sport has gotten huge. And 6'10".
I mean, Buddinger's got to be what, 6'7" or 6'8", right?
Yeah, he's probably 6'7".
Yeah,
about
6'7" and hoppy.
I mean, I remember at the NBA draft combine, he had a 47-inch vertical, so that'll get you up pretty good.
No, there's some. And the sport is global right now. It's a lot bigger than the American audience knows. And we got, like, I'm small on the world tour. I'm a small block.
Right.
Probably definitely on the bottom half in terms of size.
I mean, at this point, you're almost a small defender.
Yeah, right. No, defenders are like 6'5" now.
Right.
So there's some athletes definitely coming out on the
awesome.
beach. Yeah. On the global stage.
The basketball to beach transition is a relatively common one. Because the silver medalist in the 1996 games, Mike Whitmarsh, he played in the NBA. He was with the T-Wolves for a little while. And Mike Dodd, not many people know that he was taken in the 10th round of, I think it was the 1985 NBA draft for the San Diego Clippers. And then you mentioned Wilt, we got Chase Budinger. A lot of people will make the basketball to beach volleyball transition because there's so many commonalities in the sport.
They also love the lifestyle of it. Like
Wilt
was 100% the lifestyle guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Going down you heard about him.
Of course, right? He's he's going down with the tie-dye tank top and the bandana and, hey, what's going on, gals? Mm-hmm. Look at me, I'm Wilt Chamberlain. No, that's but I mean, talk about a great lifestyle though too, right? I mean, you guys already both said it, but I mean, that must be one of the most attractive parts of the sport.
Yeah, well, it's something we like to cover a lot on the podcast, is kind of paint the actual picture of what it is. And there are people players who are in it for the lifestyle, and it absolutely exists. Like, you go down to the South Bay, you become a part of that LA beach community, at least in the US, that's kind of the epicenter. But then there's the other half of it where it's like really elite world-class athletes, and it's kind of turned more into that over the last few years. It certainly started as a beach party sport. Like, literally, that's how it started. Kegs in the sand, just throwing tournaments, girls in bikinis. That's how it started.
Yeah, right.
But it's shifted immensely. Like, I don't know, last 10 years? No.
It's become kind of more professional.
Maybe like the Misty May, Carrie Walsh, era where it was like, whoa, like these are like elite level Olympian athletes.
Right.
Obviously, Karch kind of had that, but
yeah, I think the major shift came from in the 90s, when it was sort of at its height, the major sponsors were Cuervo and Miller. And then in the 2000s, the biggest sponsor was, funnily enough, Crocs.
Yeah, a little different.
And so that's quite a lifestyle shift.
No doubt.
Who you're promoting and who you're sort of marketing for.
MTV spring break era, T-shirt contests, bikini contests on the beach. So like Crocs and like healthy living and family lifestyle stuff.
Yeah, so we've sort of shifted, as the sponsors have shifted, the the sport has shifted into a more wholesome, fit, healthy living lifestyle. There's still a very big party element to it, but as the money has come from different spaces, so too has kind of the general behavior and lifestyle allure of it.
And we used to have, there was an after party after every event when I first came on tour.
Right.
That's not a thing anymore, which I don't know if that's good or bad.
There's trade-off.
Yeah, right.
Now I'm kind of missing it.
Totally. As we record this on Friday morning, these guys are actually out right now in Missoula, down at Playfair Park. Beautiful new facility here, relatively new facility here in Missoula, with a whole bunch of sand volleyball courts, and it's been cool to see the engagement from the Missoula community and also the growth of this sport. But that's kind of like what you guys prompted you guys to sort of go on tour, right? And we have filmers in the studio right now. You guys are making a little bit of this is like a pilot for a sort of TV product, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we finally, after 7 years, we became an official LLC business. And instead of it being a podcast, it was Sandcast Media, because we're essentially a media company doing all things beach volleyball. And we were talking about earlier about the power of going hyper local with news.
Yeah.
And what we found is when we've gone hyper local with beach volleyball, even though we're not going for a massive reach, but the beach volleyball community is this small but mighty thing.
For sure.
And when you're into beach volleyball, you are into it.
For sure.
Like, you know how Oakland Raiders fans are just psychopaths for Oakland Raiders?
Right, totally.
That's how beach volleyball fans are for beach volleyball, and it's awesome. And so I've played all these little grassroots tournaments all over the country. He's been on the world tour, and so he hasn't gotten to see these beautiful little pockets. And that's kind of the idea, is just to find the Missoulas and these little communities everywhere where you have people like Libby Schneider, who just loves beach volleyball and is going to watch all the matches and coming out here and meeting all the people. Like, that's the fabric of the sport.
Yeah, it's also bringing our fan base, like bringing their attention to all these hot spots around the country, because these fans they do love the sport, and I'm sure they would love to travel to all the hot spots around the country.
Totally.
But they don't really know about it. Like I didn't. Like I just had my vision on the world tour, the top elite level, and eventually with the podcast, I learned about all these grassroots and these hot spots around the country where they just have amazing fan base, and they're like, let's go out there and highlight them and see everyone and get face to face with people. And I'm excited.
It's such a cool deal too, like we're talking about with just the attachment that people have to things. This is something that we've talked about so often. Do you want an audience of 100,000 people but that only listen to a fringe of what you're saying, or do you want an audience of 200 people but they listen to every word that you say, right? Like, that's what we're talking about here.
Exactly. And that's I don't know if you've heard of Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans concept.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we've gone for. And
it's awesome.
And we talk about the lifestyle, and my every day is I wake up and I go coach Betsy Flint and Julia Scholes. A lot of times I'll coach Triborn and Came Shock, or Triborn and someone new coming up. And then I'll go back and I'll hang out with my wife and kid. And then at night, me and Tri will podcast. I'm like, all right, so I wake up and hang out with my friends on the beach. And then I hang out with my wife and kid on the beach. And then I go chat with one of my best friends with our friends.
Right.
And that's my life.
It's a pretty good life, man. I gotta say.
Awesome.
And then you get to come on a semi-work vacation to Missoula, Montana. So here you are.
Yeah.
So when it comes to this weekend, all sorts of fun stuff going on. As I mentioned, right now as you listen to this on ESPN Radio, these guys are about to launch basically the live version of this podcast from the courts down there at Playfair Park. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on this weekend, too. You guys have some clinics, there's some pickup games, there's some discussions, Q&As. So just give people kind of the lay of the land and what you hope they get out of this weekend.
Yes, so Friday night and it'll be well past the time we put this out, will be a live in-person podcast. First time we've ever done that. Really excited about it. And then right after, we're doing an exhibition match, and Tri's got to sit this one out, so we're doing Zana Muno and Deanna Kraft, two of the best up-and-coming talents on the AVP. They're going to be playing a co-ed match with Hunter Lorick and Brody Schneider. And so every boy's dream come true, getting to play with Zana and Deanna.
I think they're happy that I had to rest my shoulder for another
They're going to
day.
accept the sub, we can tell you that. And then Saturday, Zana and Deanna. So Zana, just for those who don't know, she led the AVP in digs per set in 2022 and led the AVP in total digs in 23. So she's objectively the best digger in the United States.
Wow.
Her and Deanna are going to lead a defensive clinic, and then the afternoon, me and Tri are doing serving and offense. And then we're doing an exhibition match, so it'll be me and Zana, Tri and Deanna, and then we'll flip the teams. and we're going to the P-Heads game, baby.
Nice. How much do you guys know about the minor league baseball team here in town?
Not much.
So this is fascinating. It used to be an affiliated team. It was affiliated with the Arizona Diamondbacks. So very many great players came through here. Paul Goldschmidt played in Missoula. Now it's an independent league team, but that means they can sort of construct their own roster. It's not about development. It's about trying to win now. So they have this juggernaut of a team. I mean, they're averaging like 12 runs a game. They're hitting like 350 as a team.
Damn.
So you guys are going to see some runs.
Hell yeah.
If you're getting used to the pro baseball where it's faster now, the pro baseball pitch clock is great if you're watching it on TV. When I go to the parks, though, I actually hate it because, if you're going to the game, you don't care if it's a 4-hour game. You can have a couple beers, whatever.
Right.
Now, if it's a 2-hour game, you're like, well, I can, it takes an hour to get a beer. You can't really hang out. These games, though, you're going to have a lot of time to hang out and have some fun. And it's right there by the river in Missoula, and I mean, it's one of the most picturesque places in town. So,
well, glad we brought the film crew.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you guys are going to have a good time. When it comes to sort of the promotion of the sport, the Q&A part of this Sandcast, what sort of education do you hope to provide?
I'm a little worried, actually. Yeah, I got some interesting news on my own part, as he alluded to. So I'm sure that'll come up in the Q&A.
Yeah.
But it's live, so
yeah,
anything could come up.
Totally.
Yeah, because we've been doing these fan question episodes, and since we started doing them about 2 years ago, they've been every time we do them once a month-ish, depending on, because I'm out of town all the time, he's out of town all the time. So whenever we're back together, we'll try to do it. But we'll get 115, 130 questions every time we do it.
Cool.
And we'll get to maybe 15. But they range from everything from what our favorite Paddleheads player is to what our training is like, lifestyle, partner news, Olympic updates. It ranges the full gamut.
It kind of depends on the timing of it, because a lot of our fans are updated on the sport, so they watch the last tournament or they know what's coming up. So it'll kind of be based on that.
Yeah. Well, this has been sort of purported and promoted as one of the fastest growing sports. And we talked about the lifestyle stuff like that. Why else? What do you think is bringing people to sand volleyball?
Well, I think when people watch it live, they're always shocked at how entertaining the sport is.
Yeah.
Something about just the speed of it and the mixture of finesse and power and just the athleticism of it, and you're doing it in sand. Well, the sand actually allows us to really lay out and dive, whereas indoors, you better be careful with land on your chest or roll.
Right.
For us, we're pile driving our necks into the sand half the time, flipping and flopping.
Right.
So I think the athleticism of it and people getting to watch it in person actually makes them kind of a true fan of it. But then, we have the NCAA as well, which has just been huge.
How long is that? It's been a couple years now, right?
It was an AVCA sport in 2012, and they needed to hit a requisite 40 schools to sponsor it within 4 years. Well, they hit that in a year and a half.
Wow.
And so it became an NCAA sport. Now there's 120 plus D1s. So it's the fastest growing sport in NCAA history.
Wow.
When you put scholarships on the line, mom and dad are like, yo, you're going to the beach.
Right.
And then I think it's an exposure thing.
Totally.
So now that you have more people playing the sport, more people seeing it. And so my brothers, for example, we didn't grow up watching beach volleyball at all. Every now and then we'd tune in to the Olympics and watch Misty and Carey and Phil Dahlhauser and Todd Rogers. But now that my brother has come out and he's watched the Manhattan Open every 5 years, he is a huge beach volleyball fan. Because like Tri said, once you see it and you're there in person and you're on the beach and you're realizing what insane athleticism it requires, it's a phenomenal sport to watch.
Totally.
And so I think the more people play, the more people are exposed to it, the more people stick around to see it.
It seems to me there's a little bit of an easier entry point too compared to indoor, just because it's a little bit simpler, right? I've covered a lot of indoor volleyball, but I still can't figure out the substitution patterns and the nuances of what's going on. That's pretty easy. You got one partner, you trade off serving, and it seems like just a little bit less complicated.
There's no entry point. Some of these tournaments are really open, so it's basically the top, Olympic level athletes, and then pretty much anyone can sign up. Anyone can get a crack at it. Obviously, you got to go from the very bottom.
Sure.
It's not easy, but it is kind of funny that you have Olympians competing against guys who just somehow got good, in their neighborhood court, and they somehow qualified. And then somehow, the Cinderella story, and they actually qualify, and they got to play the 1 seed. They're playing Olympians.
Yeah.
That's rare that can happen, but It's kind of funny.
Yeah. But I think that it's just there's no sitting on the bench in beach volleyball.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
no
if
looking
you're
at coach, hey, sub,
yeah,
I need you, coach.
So if you're a kid and you're only playing 2 rotations on indoor, and you're like, I don't want to be spending all day sitting the bench in a gym, and I'm going to hear whistles in my head for thousands of hours. Like, let's go to the beach. You sit out 0 points. You touch a ball every single rally. And so I think for a lot of the appeal is for the kids who aren't a 6 rotation player indoor, and a lot of it is for the 6 rotation players indoor who can use it as training. But there's 0 bench sitting, so you're playing and you're active and you're touching the ball every time, and you're also, to be honest, you're on the beach. It's pretty awesome.
Right. One of our guests earlier, John Henry Anderson, who's the head of beach for Big Sky Volleyball Club, he was saying too, one of his favorite parts, club volleyball, okay, you got all these different, U17, U14, all these teams. You go to an event, everybody's going, there's all these coaches. He said a lot of times in beach volleyball, you have your teammate, and it's not really cost effective to like pay for the coach to go there. So he said he does all his coaching, and then he sends the duo out there, and they have to have personal accountability. They kind of have to work through it themselves. I thought that was an awesome point.
Yeah,
that's put lightly.
Right?
That's what we do on the world tour. If you become a professional beach volleyball player, you're going to be an expert at booking flights, and hotels, travel, credit card points. Everything is on you.
Yeah, you're the director of operations as well as your own coach and your player.
Yeah, we always joke about if you're hiring people for a company, like hire ex-beach volleyball players, ex-beach volleyball pros. They'll have all the life skills that you need to get any job done.
Totally.
Yeah, and I honestly think if you are a 12 to 16-year-old kid, I think it's better not to have a coach with you at these tournaments because you will learn so fast how to solve problems with your partner, and it'll be really helpful for you on the court to have your coach there. But I think it's going to make you so anti-fragile. It's going to make you such a good problem solver, both on the court and off the court. It's just going to make you a more well-rounded human being when you don't have a coach holding your hand and just being like, hey, you got to be nice to her. She's a little sensitive. Whereas versus if you can figure all that interpersonal stuff on your own and you can figure out the strategy on your own, you're going to enter the quote-unquote real world armed with a lot of really valuable skills.
Well, this is awesome, guys. I appreciate you for being flexible and coming down here. And I hope it goes really well today. Anything else you guys need to add or want to add to promote this event before we get you out of here?
Man, well, we just appreciate you having us on.
Of course, man.
It's great to see another studio, another people mic set up, and it's a blast hanging out with you.
Yeah. So if you can, go hang out with these guys. Missoula Sandcast, they'll be hanging out down at Playfair Park at the new sand volleyball courts down there starting about 5 p.m. And come learn more about the sport because this is going to be a really fun deal, and you guys can learn from a couple pros that not only are pros in the sport, but also pros in the podcasting world. Travis, thanks so much for being here, man.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio. We've had tons of volleyball. We appreciate Jen Keddy and John Henry Anderson and these two for coming on with us. But we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming. Let's have some laughs here on a Friday. Carolyn, the Chicken Doesn't Know Sports. Coming up on the other side. Don't change that dial. Keep it right here. It's Nuanez Now, ESPN Radio.